And so there you go, we're recording. So morning, welcome everybody to this session. My name's Mark and I'm running through a bunch of things with you during the course of the session today. And we're looking at explanations and modelling in a way that you can use a variety of Microsoft tools to do that. So I'm going to share my screen with you. I've got a little bit of a presentation to run through. Some demonstrations and so forth and so on. So hopefully this will all come up okay. So you should be able to see my presentation now, hopefully, fingers crossed. And seeing as I know your mic is working, could you just confirm you can see my slides? That'd be great.
Yeah, I can see those.
Super duper. So I'm just going to go full screen and I'll work my way through the presentation as is. So hi, like I said, my name's Mark. I'm a former teacher, school leader, and I've been writing and tweeting and sharing about using technology to support teaching and learning for a long time now. I love using technology to support my teaching and the learning of my students, and it's a great way to really connect in authentic and engaging ways. But technology's got a real propensity to be and have the opportunity to be quite gimmicky. So it's really important to me when I'm using technology and I'm sharing about technology in the classroom that it has got impactful means and efforts and impacts. So with that in mind, what I'm going to do during this session is I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to firstly tell you about myself. If you want to get in touch beyond today, like I say, my Twitter handle is ICT Evangelist. We're using some hashtags during the sessions as well. So Getter, which is the Global EdTech Academy. This has been organised by Microsoft Education, so Microsoft Edu and We Are Q, are hashtags you could use if you wanted to tweet about the session as well. I've neglected to write my name in the bottom left-hand corner, but I've already said who I am, so I'm not too worried about that. So yeah, the session is about using Microsoft tools to improve the quality of explanations and modelling. And I've got sort of three sections I'm going to run through during the course of this session today. The first is about evidence and what research says about teaching and learning with technology in relation to this particular topic. We're then going to have a look at some ideas about how you can do it, and there are loads of ways we can actually use the available technology that we have at our fingertips to help us with our explanations and modelling. Some of that can be done by us as teachers, some of that can be done in sort of co-creation with our learners, and some of that can be done by our learners by themselves as well. And it also sort of links into the ways in which we can do feedback and peer assessment and those sort of things as well. And then I'm sort of built in a little bit of time for some hands-on time for you to explore some of the things that we've shared, for you to have a little go and for me to be available to answer any questions that you might have, some of the things that you're trying out for yourself as well. So I hope that sort of resonates with you, and I hope that you get something from this session. It's always lovely to hear back at the end of a session how well people are sort of getting on with this. And sometimes it's a week or two later when people actually get a chance to actually embed some of the ideas into their practice. So if it's a week or 2 weeks later and you're sort of engaging in these sort of things, then please do get back in touch with me again on Twitter at ICT Evangelist, or through my website. There's a contact form, ictevangelist.com/contact. I'm always very pleased and happy to hear from people who have been into one of my sessions. And remember, this session, if you want to watch back, is being recorded. So after each session has been done, Kathy Kushnowski from New Jersey is going to be taking each day, every session, and sort of adding them to the Q YouTube channel. So you can always watch those things back again in the future, should you want to. So what is the evidence and what does the research say? Well, there's loads of research about the topic that we're talking about today. And an old adage of mine, which is kind of why I've chosen the yellow on this particular slide, there's a song from the 80s by a band called Bananarama. And in the song they sang, it ain't what you do, it's the way that you do it. And that really relates to lots and lots of technology. And so it ain't so much what you do, it's the way that you do it. And so we've got lots of examples of how that sort of resonates and works with explanations and modelling I'm going to run through with you. So I'm going to be looking at research from the Education Endowment Foundation. They've got a fantastic teaching and learning toolkit, which shows you about the different impacts of the uses of technology. For example, and not just technology for teaching and learning in schools. The two biggest impacts with the lowest amount of investment in money and the strongest amount of evidence linked to it is strategies around feedback and metacognition and self-regulation. But we've got lots of other bits of research that can help us as well. And back in March last year, they released a report into what works when it comes to teaching and learning with technology. The first thing they ask you to consider is how technology will improve teaching and learning before you actually introduce it. So that for me seems to be quite an obvious thing to do. We should really think about why we're going to use technology, what uses technology can have. It often can be really like, wow, but if you don't think about how you're going to use it or think about how you're going to sort of deploy it and manage it and all those different things, you're unlikely to be successful with any sort of technology rollout. So it's really important to sort of go through the hard yards and consider how technology will have impacts in your organisation before you introduce it. Like I said, that to me seems to be like a bit of a no-brainer, but the next three areas from the four key recommendations link through to teaching and learning. The first one of which is what we're going to explore today, which is how we can use technology to improve the quality of explanations and modelling. And the next one is about the ways in which it can actually offer improvements in the impact of pupil practice. And actually, thinking about what we're doing today, some of the things that I'll be sharing with you about inking and animations in PowerPoint and using 3D models and Excel and how you can do this sort of stuff live on a PowerPoint slide or in your OneNote class notebook. These are all things which link really nicely into all sort of key areas. And the final one here, like I say, assessment and feedback, all these things we're talking about actually sit together really, really nicely. So whether we're inking in OneNote, let's say, to explain something really clearly, moving through the various steps. If you're a maths teacher like Em is, for example, as you're moving through those various steps, using the inking tools is a really great way of doing that. And I'll talk more about research into using visualizers in a few moments as well. But when it comes to doing this sort of thing, all these three here, you know, are explanations and modelling, impact of pupil practice, and giving assessment and feedback. They can all work in the same sorts of approaches in terms of using the technology, but using them in different ways which link to these different teaching and learning activities. So those are the four recommendations, and I strongly suggest you have a look at the Education Endowment Foundation toolkit for using digital in the school, because it really will keep you sort of finely honed and sort of closely thinking about the ways in which technology can have the most impact with what it is that you do, because often it isn't the wow and the whiz bang and all the woohoo things that you can do with tech that have the big wins. But it's those things that which sort of make those processes far more transparent and clear and easy to work with. So that's that from the Education Endowment Foundation. I break these things down into sort of three simple rules, and keeping these purposes quite simple. You know, when it comes to thinking about your teaching and learning with technology, try and focus on things which enhance learning, support your teaching, or speed up processes. And as I say, the things I'm going to share with you today, hopefully you'll see as being relatively easy to do. Hopefully you will. But it can actually have a big impact on what it is that you do. Ruben Puentedura talks about technology use being good when you use it to do things that wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the technology. That isn't always strictly true, because there are lots of things we can do with technology that could be done with paper. But actually, you know, using your OneNote class notebook like a visualizer, for example, that means that not only can your learners watch real time on their own devices whilst you're doing it, you can project that onto your big screen. You can be recording that to your laptop and then putting it onto your Microsoft Stream or adding it to other social channels such as YouTube. There are loads of ways in which you can do things with technology to really sort of power and rocket in. Michael Fullan talks about pedagogy being the driver and technology being the accelerator. And these are all ways in which we can really give us a bit of a rocket to the work that we do with our learners in terms of teaching and learning. So in this Education Endowment Foundation toolkit, based on the research they've done, and not just into using technology, but into teaching and learning in general, they say that effective explanations are likely to involve material being introduced in logical steps, And that's really important, that sort of last bit, in logical steps, okay, with new ideas being explicitly linked to people's prior experiences and knowledge. Now, I've done something here, okay, which kind of exemplifies what I'm trying to share with you. What I've done is I've very, very simply added in, at the top here, you can see there was an introduction just here. And I set an animation step so that once I press my arrow on my keyboard, it then moves on to the next one here. And so what I'm doing is I'm actually introducing this information to you in logical steps, doing it one by one by one. That's just such a simple thing to do. It's not rocket science, okay? It's just working with the simple animation tools we've got inside PowerPoint to make it so that I'm introducing information to you in logical steps. And I'm doing it, linking it to your prior experience and your knowledge, because you do this sort of thing, I am sure, all the time inside all of your lessons. But the thing is, if I had started this slide like this, with all the information on it like this, without going through the various steps, what's going to happen is your learners are going to sit there and work through and read through all those things on the screen whilst you're trying to explain something to them. Their attention is going to be diverted into the wrong space. They're going to be reading things ahead of where they need to, so forth and so on. And so all I've done is add a simple explanation to this here. Now, if you're flipping it and you're trying to support learners' independent work, getting them to explain things, making their own little explainer videos, so forth and so on. Metacognitively, it's a great idea to try and share with your learners why you do things the way that you do. I remember when I would ask children when I was teaching full-time to create a presentation to show me what they know. And when it came to animations, they'd spend more time animating it so that every character came up one after the other, you know? And that isn't supporting what they're trying to do, or supporting them explaining things much more clearly. It's not as effective as doing sort of block by block explanations like I've said there. And as a teacher as well, so just putting all of your text up on the screen in one go isn't the best approach. So let's have all these things in mind. 4 things to consider. We're going to be focusing specifically today, particularly on these things here. And again, I'm trying to exemplify the sorts of things that we can do whilst we're working with our learners, even more so when we're doing things remotely as well. You can't see my face, you can hear my voice, you can see my slides. What I'm doing is I'm actually working on the screen as well to really reinforce the messages and the modelling and the explanations that I'm trying to give to you. So, ways to improve the quality of your explanations and modelling using Microsoft 365, of which there are many. Here's an example. So, as a teacher, when you set some work, a student will do that work and they will then send it across and hand it to you as the teacher. Okay. Once we receive some work from a student, what we then do is we do some marking to it, we write some formative feedback on it, and we send that back to the students. Now we do that so that learning is informed. It helps us to close the learning gap. Hattie talks about it being feedback being just in time, just for me, just for what moves me forward in my learning journey, all those sort of things. But we do this so that teaching is adapted based upon student responses. That means that our teaching is therefore responsive. So what I've done here again is I've used, if I brought this slide up and I wanted to talk about the feedback loop, okay, to you as people on this little webinar, I wanted to share this with people in terms of a class, I could have all of this appear at once. But what you're going to actually do then is you're going to read through all that. It's going to be there in front of you, and it's not going to link in nicely with what I'm sharing with you. Again, simple animations. All I've done is animate a few key things. If I start the slide again, the feedback loop. We're talking about the feedback loop. It starts with the students where they do some work and it goes to the teacher, who then gives it back to the student once they've done some feedback on it. We do this because, and this is reinforcing the final point. Hopefully that makes sense, everybody. So that therefore is the way in which I want to think about how we can sort of use animations, use them in a way which really help us with what it is that we're doing. We can do this when we're coming to thinking about things in mathematics as well. I could ask you this question, for example. Peter can mow the lawn in 40 minutes and John can mow the lawn in 60 minutes. How long will it take for them to mow the lawn? You know, and so I've got these information. I could have all this appear on the screen at the same time. If you're a student in the class, you're going to be reading the title. You'll then be reading the information here. You'll probably read this last down the bottom here, and then you might just get into this here. What's better, here's how I might look at it again when you're reading through all of it in one go. So what is better, okay, is to actually animate some of the sections that are in there. So if we started with this, what's the first thing you're going to read? Well, you're going to read the title first of all. You're then probably going to say, well, why is there a 1 now? This is the first one we're looking at. But most importantly, you will read the question. Now, reading the question is a really important thing to do. We know it as our teachers, but how many times when we're marking sort of mock papers, or if you're an examiner, you know, and we'll often see where students have done a really good effort in trying to answer a question, but they haven't read the question properly, fully, so forth and so on. Now, if we've got lots of other distractions, okay, in the space here, with things going on, is the student going to be focusing and thinking about the question, or are they going to be thinking about all the information which they can see over here? They're much more likely to be looking at the information which is over here. So what we can do again is use simple animation tools built into things such as PowerPoint to help us explain things and make them really, really clear and concrete to our learners. So the first thing we do is assign variables to solve this question. It could be, you know, backstage, right, Dave, what's the first thing we've got to do to help us understand and solve this equation? And Dave comes back and says, well, we need to assign the variables, Mr. Anderson. I go, well, that's very good. That's step 1. Well done. And what might that look like? Well, then we need to let x equals time to mow the lawn together. Then we need to use the formula 1 over 40 plus 1 over 60 equals 1 over x. That's fantastic. So what do we do next? Just solve the equation. Well, how do we solve the equation? And there are a variety of things we could do at this stage. As you can see, I'm using animations to bring these things through. I don't have to actually, it depends on the setup you've got. I don't have to do things this way. I could just do things by having the actual steps ready here, and I could be using this space here with my stylus. If I've got a stylus, like obviously I've got one here because I'm using one right now, but if I have access to a stylus, I don't need to have all these different things lined up and animated, talking us through how to solve all these things. I could have all the information that I want here. I could then actually be annotating those things on there. Okay, so there are lots of ways in which we can break these things down. As you can see, I'm just animating it all through all the various steps to give us the answer that we want. And obviously x, therefore, is 24. There's a variety of ways we can do this. Now, this is a mathematics example, but it can be used in lots of different ways. Whether you're a science teacher trying to explain a process in science, you can draw your icons on. You could even, once you've got your icons drawn on, then animate those icons if you wanted to, rather than actually doing it all live with your stylus. There are so many ways that you can actually develop and improve your explanations and modelling using the tools that you have available to you. So moving back further forward into the research, and this is some more from the Education Endowment Foundation. And they talk about the use of visualizers. Now, visualizers are fantastic pieces of kit. They're really super useful. But if you've got access to a Windows tablet or a device with a camera on it, or the software you're using, such as OneNote, the whiteboarding tool in Teams, so forth and so on, you don't essentially need actually a visualizer. Okay, there are lots of tools we can use as well, such as Office Lens, where we can take some fantastic shots of student work. We don't need to have a portable visualizer where we just take snaps of work on paper and annotate it and work on the actual piece of paper. Office Lens can be used by you as a teacher, or by your learners if you've got it on their phones or their tablet or their laptop. They can simply just use the camera to take a picture of their work and drop it into a space where they can actually, or you can actually, do some annotation work on it and some peer assessment and peer feedback and so forth and so on. Okay, but as the Education Endowment Foundation say, visualizers can improve or could improve the quality of explanation and modelling if they enable teachers to do the following. So these are the key things. to bear in mind. And as I say, these examples I give of using other tools other than visualizers still ring true. So it showed pupils a wider range of high quality models than they would otherwise be able to. Okay, so there's loads of ways in which we can actually look at these models in different ways using technology, and I'm going to show you some of those in just a few moments. I've mentioned some of those using words, so it's going to be good for us to have a little look at what that might look like for real. Or if teachers use the visualizer to increase the precision with which they explained worked examples, which has been consistently been found to increase learning in mathematics. And if you are a maths teacher, and I know that one of the guests today, Emma Bell, is a maths teacher, this is the research here, which is from 2017, the Improving Mathematics in Key Stages 2 and 3 reports, which is very similar to the report that we talked about earlier on in this session, where they give a variety of recommendations about what works. You'll have a key findings document within there, and there'll be things in there which will actually talk you through the things that will work really, really well. And so actually, you know, I've said before about the using the tablet, using the Windows tablet to explain worked examples. We've seen that already just back a few slides. There was no visualizer involved. I just animated a few key parts to a worked example in maths. Now I use the animations on actual images. Okay, but again, it doesn't have to be done that way. It could be done with drawings that you make yourself, or it could be done if you've got the opportunity to, like we're doing right now, to do it live within Teams if you're delivering a live lesson. Even if it was a lesson in Teams where you're just recording it to then be shared later on, you can record directly in PowerPoint and share that to Microsoft Stream straight away as well. There are loads of ways you can do that without the need to actually have a visualizer full stop. So, thinking about this sort of use, what can we do with this? Well, there are loads of tools available to us. OneNote Class Notebook, we have Office Lens, we have PowerPoint, we have Excel, we have Microsoft Forms. And what I want us to try and do now, if we can please, actually, is to go to this address here. And to help you get to this address, I'm just going to come out of the presentation for a second, and I'm just going to I don't want to keep those, so I'll discard those. I want to just copy this, and I'll pop this into the chat inside Teams, so long as it doesn't actually crash. And what I'd like you to do is to go to that address, if you could, please. So I'll just go in and jump onto here. And when you're there, if you just go to the checking in sheet, please, once you get into that spreadsheet. And I've got a little activity for you to do when you first get in, if you could, please. It's nice to see when people are actually live in Sheets, and I love being able to work collaboratively and all these sorts of things. So come through, please, to the link I've shared in the chat. I can see a few of you starting to come through now. Brilliant, fantastic. And just colouring a cell red, amber or green, depending on how you're feeling today. Now, this is completely anonymous. You're all coming in as guests. Okay, so how are you feeling today? I have got a cup of coffee next to me. I might be an amber, but I think after a sip of this cup of coffee, I might go to a green. Of course, if you're in the Americas, it's quite late at night now with you. It's probably about midnight if you're on Pacific Standard Time, even later if you're on Eastern Time. So yeah, fantastic, great stuff. Thank you very much for giving us your little bit of feedback there. Now, I'm just going to jump now across into this model example. I want to use it to serve as a general purpose thing really here. Now, you can do this sort of thing. I can see somebody's already actually come through onto this sheet to have a little look around, and that's fine. You can protect errors. I've got it completely unprotected. So if you want to sort of change a few things, and what I'd like you to do actually is, what I've done is I've put in some simple information. It doesn't really mean anything. It could be, for example, the temperature of water as it's heated up to boiling point. That could be it. It could be lots of different things. Okay, but it's just trying to serve a simple purpose. Could you please just feel free to go on the model example tab in the worksheet model example. In column B, it says temperature. Can you just go into one of the cells in column B and just change the variables that are there? So I don't mind what numbers you put in. It's fine. It's just to show what actually happens. This is live data, you see. And so as you change things on the side over here, at a very, very basic level, what we're doing is we're tweaking the model, and we can see how things develop and tweak and change and so forth and so on. And that's really powerful, I think. We can take that thinking and utilize it in lots of other ways as well. Lots of subjects require students to sort of serve up and do a variety of experiments. Okay, so now science is a great example of that. Okay, they'll record reaction times and speeds and velocities and all sorts of data being captured in experiments. We see it a lot in maths too. And when we're teaching mathematical concepts and when we're thinking about charts and how to create charts and so forth and so on. Now, when you create a Microsoft form, one of the options that you have is to send the data directly through to a spreadsheet. Now, what you can do is once you've got that data into, once you've actually created that form and you've got the spreadsheet made, what you can actually do is you can actually highlight the areas where you expect to receive your data and create your chart up front. So as your class are then working through and completing and filling in all of the various variables into that form, you can, for example, have your chart. So I could have, let's say this is the this sheet. I'll just copy that a second. I'll just pop this onto this blank sheet here. Now, here's my lovely chart. My class are busy beavering away, working away, and they are filling in their data. They're putting all the information into the form. It's all being sorted, happy days. And as each various piece of data comes in, so the chart will automatically update, and they can see the information coming in really, really quickly. Not only is that really authentic and really lovely that they can see all that stuff coming in as they're working, it's also really important for them to understand the process of all of that. It's also really important that they get to actually see the results of that. And then sharing it in a really transparent way means that you can have those conversations about what it is that you're doing whilst you're doing it. Now, if we go back into the presentation for a second, and I go back and read what it is that they say here. It improves the quality of explanations and modelling if they enable teachers to increase the precision with which they explain worked examples. It's consistently been found to increase learning. So if we're going to utilise some of these features, we need to do it in really transparent and clear ways so that our learners are able to sort of be informed about what's happening in the learning process. I'm just going to stop there for a second and jump back into Teams because I'm aware I'm going through at quite a speed here. I'm just going to throw things over to all of you for just a moment and see whether you've got any questions for me. If you could just give me a question if you've got one. If you're happy, please just send me a quick message saying happy. That'd be really helpful. Thanks, Emma. Thank you, Fiona. Shireen, yes, no, for your Excel to be editable, it had to be in a bit.ly. No, I made a bit.ly vanity link just to make it easier for you if you were going to be typing it in. So I took the share link and I can show you that on the screen now, hopefully. So just double check my screen sharing as well, actually. Just stop sharing my screen a second and make sure I am sharing the right bit. There we go. So yeah, what I did, Shireen, was I went to the sharing option. I just brought up the sharing options. And I went to copy link, making sure it was set to anyone with the link can edit. I went to copy link like so. It created a shareable link and I copied that. And that was the link that I shared. But because the link itself is quite long and you didn't want to type it, and if I pasted that link, for example, into our chat, it would have been huge. And so I used the Bitly website. I've got an account with them. It's free to do, and you can create your own what are called vanity links. So that's how I came up with the Bitly that I created. It was just a vanity link to make it easier for sharing. Okay. Brilliant. Yeah, I use it a lot. It depends on how and what I'm working. Obviously, if I'm working in Teams, it's easy to add it into resources. I can paste stuff really easily into a OneNote class notebook if I'm working in that sort of a way. Loads and loads of different ways. But if I'm presenting like I am right now, Bitly's are super useful and helpful for these sorts of things. There are other services available. It's just what I use myself. Okay. Any other questions at all from anybody before I move on? Give it a few more teacher seconds. Okay, brilliant stuff. So back onto the presentation. Hopefully, no, I'm not sharing, so I'll just come back to here again and bring that up properly for us. This is the right one, just here. Yeah, brilliant stuff. So I wanted to talk with us about a variety of these different tools. Okay, so OneNote Class Notebook. There are so many features in OneNote Class Notebook that are really, really just awesome. I don't think I have time to actually do a live demo of that during the session today, or Office Lens, but I do want to talk about PowerPoint now as well. Okay, because using PowerPoint is such a fantastic way to actually just share things really, really quickly and make it really impactful with our learners. So I had this maths example, and how did I do it? Well, I basically had a whole image and then I just cropped it down to make all these different parts here, which I then animated through so that it all appeared nicely. Top tip, if you want to animate lots of little things together in a specific order, if you sort of just click off the slide for a second, click onto the first thing that you want to animate and then press the Control key and then just click onto each of the next few things that you want to actually animate. And it's quite tight sometimes, as you can see just here. But because I've chosen to animate these things or clicking on them in this particular order, when it comes to actually animating those things, so if I go to animations and I'll choose my option that I want, say from fly into fade and what have you, because I won't do this because I've already got it all set up and it wouldn't work as well because I've got my animations there already. But because I've actually clicked on those in that particular order, if I then go on to the option that I want to use for bringing them in on the entrance animation, it will add them to the animation sequence in the order in which I have selected them. So there shouldn't be any need for you to rearrange them in the animation pane. And because the animation pane here, for example, you can see I've got them all here. They're all there. Happy days. Okay. If I'm doing it from scratch myself, make sure you press Control and click onto each of those in the order in which you want them to appear, and they will then appear in that order. Okay. So let's do that in a worked example. So if I just go to this one here, and I'll just move it there. And here's a little lesser known tip as well. Copy and paste is a super useful thing, but you can go even quicker than that. There's a feature called duplicating, lots of Microsoft tools. Okay, so rather than pressing Control and C and Control and V, I'm just doing Control and D to duplicate the items that are here on my slide. The same thing is true on the side here as well. I could press Control and C and Control and V. If I want to just duplicate that particular slide, I just select it and press Control and D, and it then just duplicates that as well. So not going to change your life in terms of speeding things up, but every little helps, as they say. So going back to this example of how we animate things in the order we animate them. So I'm clicking on the first one, I'm pressing Control and keeping my finger on Control. I'm tapping the next one, and then I'm tapping the next one. And now when I go to my animations and I choose my option, which would be fade, let's say, it will do those 1, 2, 3 in the order that I want over here. And if it isn't quite as I want it to be, let's just bring the animation pane options up a second. So as I go onto here, I can then go to start with previous, and this one here will then start on click. See the numbers coming through now like so. But you can see it has placed them 1, 2, 3 in the order in which I've actually chosen them through doing the Control and the click. And if I run the slide like so, the first one comes in automatically, and or how about this one, or how about this one? And so that's just a really quick and simple way of getting your animations in the order that you want them to be in. But that's all very well and good. What else can we do? Well, if you haven't seen the tools available to you, okay, yeah, then you don't really know what you don't know. So if I just run this full screen again a second on my slideshow, what I have down here, I have a bunch of controls to help me. Okay, and the one I actually want to go into is this one just here. So you've got a variety of things that can help us when it comes to actually doing the live writing on our slides using the ink. Now, sometimes it might just be you want to use the laser pointer and you can just point at the things that you want and all of that. You can actually do that with your mouse as well. I was doing the pointing before with my stylus. Now, if you don't have a stylus, I say you can still access these tools just by using your mouse trackpad. The highlighter is quite a nice tool as well. We can use that, for example, just to, if I just bring the highlighter, actually choose the highlighter, that'd be helpful. We can use the highlighter to just highlight the key things here. It's not about necessarily annotating those things. It's about highlighting them. Okay, but going back into the list here, it is the pen tool that I want to spend a bit more time actually thinking about. You've got a variety of colours you can choose from as well. So it could be that you introduce things. So today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to think about adding 1 + 1. Okay, now I can say now that equals 2. If I wanted to sort of expand that point further, I can simply go onto here and choose another colour. So bearing on that in mind, what would 2 + 2 equal? And the answer is 4. I'm no maths teacher, so please forgive my rudimentary explanations here. Something I've seen a lot being done in science as well is to actually create your own versions of sort of key elements inside your science lesson that you need to use as a science teacher. Let me just discard that a second. So what I've seen a bunch of teachers doing is creating, and you can do this in a variety of ways, but creating their own icons for key elements inside a science lesson. So for example, things like a conical flask, things such as a Bunsen burner, so forth and so on. These can be drawn straight onto your screen, and all you have to do in order to draw those on is like I'm doing now. You don't have to be, again, I'm no science teacher, but once you've got these items available to you here on the screen as well, they then become actual shapes. Okay, so I can make it nice and big, easy to draw, but then I can just resize it, I can move it around, and I can add that into, if I don't like it, it's not very good, I can obviously delete it. But I can draw the different tools that I'm going to be using. And again, there are specific symbols for these things if you are a science teacher. I am not a science teacher. But by using these drawings that we've got directly within here as well, not only are you making this relevant for your learners, but you're actually again making a lovely slide which will then reinforce what you're doing with your explanations and your modelling. So I'll spend just a moment now quickly to wrap up before we get into the hands-on bit, showing you how we do the Microsoft Forms stuff and feed it through into Excel. So I'm just going to jump into Edge for a second, which should be over here still. I need to just repoint the screen sharing to Edge for a second. Now, there's a variety of ways to get into Microsoft Forms. You can obviously go to your office.com login. Okay, you can also go to forms.office.com, and that will then bring up Microsoft Forms for you. Now I'm just going to create a new form, and I'm just going to call it Mark's example form, add new. Okay, and so I'll put text, and I'll put in name, and I'll put in a choice this time, which is going to be your age, option 1. Let's say you are doing something with children in year 8 and 9. I'll add another option in case we need it. Now, that's really, really simple. If I go to responses over here, I haven't shared this form with anybody yet. Okay, if I go to responses over here, now I can see some stats and I can see some data that would come through into here, but the key for me is to go to open in Excel, because once I've done that, he says, and I always love for things to not work quite right during a presentation to show that things can at least go wrong for absolutely everybody. Let's just try and jump onto here for a second. So at this point here, I'd like to share this. Okay, so there's a variety of ways in which you can share Microsoft Forms with your classes. One of the things I love about the way in which all this sort of stuff sings together is when I'm using OneNote class notebook. If I grab this URL here, when I paste it into, and I'll just bring the QR code up for you. If anybody of you want to sort of go and fill this in, you can scan that on your phones now if you want to and start to fill it in. One of the things I absolutely love about the integration is when I take that link I've just copied and I paste it straight into OneNote class notebook. I was asked before about the bit.ly question, and bit.ly is a great way of actually shortening the time it takes students to get to a particular resource. But it's even quicker when it comes to using things like forms and sharing them with your classes, because if you grab that copy link and paste it directly into your OneNote class notebook for your class, it actually embeds the form directly into your notes within OneNote class notebook, which is superb, because it means that straight away all your learners, all they've got to do is just go and just start filling the form in. There's nothing else for them to do. So I can just grab some data from you very quickly though. I'm just going to jump back into Teams for just a second. I'm going to show the conversation, and I'm going to share that link with you just there, and hope that you could just pop some data into there for me, please, if you could. So that's now shared, and let's go back into this responses tab here. And this isn't the best of looks. I must have done something wrong here, because it should allow me to put that into Excel so that I can then annotate and change the data. Let me just see if I can troubleshoot this whilst we're here, because it's going to be important for us to be able to actually have some information here. So I'll pop in Mark, and I'm age 14, and I'm going to submit. Great. Now let's see what happens now. Now I've got some data. There we go. I thought that was it. Now it does give us this live information here, and again, we don't have to do all of this in terms of dropping things through into Excel. But the reason why I like Excel for doing these analysis, it means that no permission to view, Mrs. Clark says. Let me just check the settings here again for a second. On share, only people like this isn't it. Thank you for the point, Mrs. Clark. Yeah, anyone with the link can respond. Let's just, it may have updated that link now, so I'll just copy it and pop it back into. Thank you for the notes. That may well be the exact same URL. Yes, it is. If you go to it now, it should put some data through to you. And a few responses now. I've got Emma, and I'm sure Mrs. Clark will come through in a second as well. Now, as I say, this here is great, and we can view this information, and it does stuff for us, and we can see some charting happening straight away and all of this. We can even, if we want to, on here, get a summary link, so you can share a summary of the results with other people. I love the fact, I'm opening this in Excel now, I've got some data. I love the fact that I can do a few things with this. There you go. So just going to open this into Excel. Okay, that's not a great start. Let's just try that again. Thank you, Sarah. So the beauty of this for me is that now we've got this data, we can actually really work on this, and the information will come in live, and we can sort of work on it, we can annotate it, we can have all this shared really simply and easily. I think it's super, super useful in order for us to do these things. And it's just another way that we can actually improve our explanations and modelling. So what I'm going to do now, looking at the time, I was going to jump back into Teams for a second. And before I do that, actually, I'll jump into Teams for a second now. And I'll just stop my screen sharing for a second. The next section for us to look at really in the presentation at least is this hands-on time, finding what resonated with you and what you will try. So what I'd like us to do, if you've still got your Excel tab open, remember that checking in tab idea that I gave on the example spreadsheet. Jumping back on, if you could please now, to that spreadsheet for a second. It'd be nice to sort of bring everyone's comments together into one space. On the checking in sheet, please, where you've put your colours and so forth and so on. Are there any things that you would like to try? Are there any things that you'd like some help with? What do you think your next steps might be? And whilst I just jump back into Teams, I'll stop the sharing, and I will share that sheet. And so I'm going to share my desktop. There you go. That should share absolutely everything. So what I'm keen to do is to ask you then, please, what resonated with you and what will you try? So on this sheet here, it could be, if I click into here, it could be that you want to try ink in PowerPoint, or I might want to try to but using the tool as a visualizer. Yeah, a visualizer for remote learning is absolutely fantastic. There are loads of options in PowerPoint Live. I'm not sho who mentioned that, but not only is it great in the way that I've been sharing it and showing it today, they've been adding some new functionality into PowerPoint within Edge as well, which is well worth exploring. So please do have a good look at that as well. Any other ideas people are coming up with? Okay, so I'll just leave that going for just a second. I just want to try something for a second, but it's not got my OneNote set up quite right here for a second, so it's not going to be as easy for me to share with you as I want to. But let me just go into and see if I can sign in. No, it's not going to let me do that. I didn't think it would. I want to try and show you OneNote and Office Lens with how it's all tied in. Let's load up the Office Lens app a second. Okay, so Office Lens is superb. I'm just going to pop my camera face down a bit so you're not staring at my living room for a second. What I'm going to do, I'm going to bring something up. Okay, so I want you to imagine that what I'm sharing with you now, which isn't a piece of student work, let's imagine that it is a piece of student work. I'm just going to jump back into Office Lens for a second. Now, I need to just share things back with you on here a second. Right, so my sharing is now up. No, I don't want to share that with you. Come on, chop chop. Okay, so screen one. There we go. So you can see Office Lens is open. And what's great about this is once it's open, you can see it's trying to pick out the edge of the page. And this would be great if I was trying to get a piece of student work in the classroom. It could be something, a piece of paper that you've done some work on, you want to annotate and go over and talk over. But all you've got to do once you've got Office Lens open, and Office Lens is free from the Windows App Store. Just install it and put it onto your device. Take the picture, and what it will do once you've taken that picture is crop it down to the dimensions that you think, or that it thinks, are actually correct and work for you. I'm just going to pop my Surface back onto my desk a second. So now that we've got this in place, there's a bunch of things we can do with the screen grab that we've got. Firstly, there's some bits over here that I don't want. So what I can do with this is I can actually go to the recrop option here and just bring in the sides here. I can tick the box and I'll crop that down much more clearly. And then once we're in here, there's a whole bunch of things that we can then do. We can go to here and save it. And we can put it into lots and lots of different places. But the great thing is that basically anything that we've got, and this is the real beauty of, well, one of the real beauties of Office Lens, is that once we've actually got it, we can actually then send it to loads of different locations ready to use, just like you would a visualizer. You can give it a name that's better than the one it's picked, which is the date and the time and Office Lens and things. You can choose a specific section within a OneNote if you want to, or put it into your OneDrive, or into a Word document, or into a PowerPoint, or into a PDF, or indeed into all of those different spaces. There are loads of ways in which we can use these tools to actually really support all these different things I'm talking about with these different sort of research informed approaches to using these different types of technology. What I am going to do now, though, ladies and gentlemen, is I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to open the chat. And I just want to say we're getting close to the hour, and I need to start wrapping up this session. Mrs. Clark guessed, any OneNote top tips to help manage it all? Yeah, one thing I would say to you, Mrs. Clark, is OneNote is a fantastic hub for all these different things, right? So set your sections up with various pages and all those different things, okay? But like you saw then with the Office Lens, yeah, send stuff through to the specific pages. Another great tool that I would add for helping manage and keep all your various sort of things together in OneNote, okay, because again, OneNote is a fantastic hub. Get yourself the OneNote Web Clipper tool, which you can use in a variety of browsers, Edge and Chrome and all of that. Okay, whatever browser you choose to use, you can get the OneNote Web Clipper for it. It's great for videos from Vimeo and YouTube and whatnot as well, for bringing those through and embedding them directly into your OneNote notes for your classes in your OneNote class notebook. You can put in snippets, you can put whole links to places. It's a great way of bringing resources from a load of different places together and completely free. So if you just search using your search engine for the OneNote Web Clipper, if you want more on that, on my blog, ictevangelist.com, I've written a few blog posts about it there, and obviously if you go to education.microsoft.com, there's a whole load of helpful ideas around how you can use the Web Clipper. So hopefully that will help with you there. Have you tried using Planner, as this is good for assigning tasks to staff and keeping on top of a to-do list? Yes, absolutely. I have tried using Planner. I use a variety of tools to keep myself tracked and on task and things. To-do list in there. A big fan of using Outlook as well. It all depends on how your Microsoft 365 is set up in your workplace, though, as to how you get access to all these different tools and items and whatnot. So I'm just, as I say, mindful of the time. We are 2 minutes before 9 a.m. So that just leaves me to really want to just wrap things up a little bit and say thank you so much for attending this session. I hope you found these ideas useful. If you'd like links to the research that I have shared, then please do drop me a line on Twitter, and I will tweet about this session again in just a moment anyway. And I'll put some links in some of the things I've shared about, for example, that maths report. I'll put a link to where you can download and find the digital report from the Education Endowment Foundation as well. Please do tune in for all of the various sessions that are happening with the Global EdTech Academy as part of Q. It's been really, really fantastic to get a chance to share with you all this morning. But for now, that's me saying thank you very much for coming, and I'll hopefully catch you all soon. And I'll stop the recording now. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.